When I was a little fella, I remember I found an animal in my backyard. As far as my undeveloped, smooth, zero-crevice brain could tell, it seemed injured, so I took action and did what anyone would do. I got a shoebox for size 6 Nikes, filled it up with paper towel and blankets, and stuffed this unwilling beast inside. I spent a few days looking after it, feeding it, keeping it warm. I got attached pretty quickly. I felt like we were bonding. It made me realize how great being a stepmom could be. When they were back to being healthy, I decided to ask my parents if I could keep it. They simply responded with a firm no. It's a wild animal, son. You just can't keep it. This made no sense to me. I was angry, upset, flooded with a sea of emotions raging through my body. It led me to some thinking. We have dogs and cats as pets. Why can't I have a pink fairy armadillo or Venezuelan poodle moth? Is the human race so undeveloped and uncultured that we draw the line at such simple creatures like dogs and cats? It just doesn't make sense. Why can't I go to the pet store and pick up a baby goblin shark to take home? Life just isn't fair when you're an average white male in a first world country. In this video, we're going to take a dive into some of the strangest pets owned by usually renowned people. Ones that are living out a life that your childhood self could only have dreamed of living. To start, we'll take a trip to England. This place is known best for Taskmaster and Her Majesty the Queen. God rest her soul. It's also known for its production of above-average literature, especially when it comes to poetry. Perhaps one of the most famous poets born in the motherland of fish and chips is Lord Byron. Byron's early life was filled with hardship, being born with a club foot and raised by a schizophrenic mother and abusive nurse, and then proceeding to fall in love with his first cousin, who, to his dismay, did not want to keep it in the family like himself. Sounds like a pretty hard upbringing. But obviously there had to be some kind of shortcomings in his life. Art is created through suffering. You have to dwell on pain in order to create masterpieces. Or something like that, I don't know. Anyway, who cares? The guy was extremely handsome and loved by all genders. Men, women, etc. And it wasn't just humans either. The man who was deemed mad, bad, and dangerous to know was loved by animals of all shapes and sizes. Before we dive into the menagerie of creatures he obtained over the years, we must first talk about his beloved Newfoundland dog, Bosun. Byron got Bosun when he was 15 years of age, and he was truly man's best friend. When Byron turned 18, he went off to college in hopes to gain as much knowledge as possible, but not without his right-hand man. When he and Bosun arrived at Trinity College, he was unpleasantly greeted with negativity, being told that dogs were simply not allowed on campus. Being one of the original Mad Lads, he decided to happily abide by their rules, but not without a side order of malicious compliance. Byron decided to take a stroll down to the Stourbridge Fair and pick up nothing other than a tamed bear. Now this is a pet fit for a lord. When he went back to clown college with his bear, they were just like, oh, yeah bro, I guess you can come in. Since there was no rules against having bears on campus, they became good roommates. Byron even wanted to enroll the bear as a student. After completing his studies, he traveled back to his home, Newstead Abbey, with his ursine companion, of course. The bear fit in perfectly alongside his also tamed wolf, his honey badger, crocodile, and the rest of his collection. What a life, man. Fuck bitches, and men. Write poetry, have pets only a Russian would dare to own, and die of malaria. I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty damn good. Empress Josephine was the first wife of Napoleon, and just like every other person that slips into a stream of wealth, was obsessed with collecting exotic animals for no reason at all other than, well, I'm bored now. Of course, being Empress is hard work, so she was looking at getting a support animal to help her get through the long days ahead. Although she already had kangaroos, black swans, and emus, she wasn't satisfied. Napoleon was tired of listening to her yap, so he decided to bring home an orangutan for her. Josephine was ecstatic at the sight of her, and decided to name her Marie Rose, or Rose for short, which was Josephine's name before she tied the knot with old Napoleon here. Josephine quickly grew attached to Rose, treating the misplaced primate as her own child. She went so far as to dress her up in frilly white dresses, and taught her how to use utensils so they could eat dinner together. Anyway, Rose clearly could not get accustomed to the French lifestyle. She ended up passing away after 5 months of being there. That is not very long for a primate. For comparison, an orangutan typically lives for an upwards of like 50 years depending on conditions. But I guess you can't really blame her for kicking the bucket so soon. The majority of French people didn't learn about toothbrushes until later that century. I'm not really an expert on primates, so I'm not able to say whether or not a monkey would enjoy living in these conditions. But also I'm pretty sure animal abuse did not exist in the 1800s, so this was probably fine. Josephine was understandably devastated, but still had to fulfill Rose's final wish, to be donated to science. She donated Rose's body to the head keeper of the menagerie within the Natural History Museum in Paris to be studied. I'm starting to realize that the word eccentric only applies to rich and/or famous white people. Tycho Brahe was a Danish astronomer known for his comprehensive and accurate observations, and that was without the use of a telescope. This man lived a life filled with mostly success, and a little bit of hardship, one of the main ones being losing a piece of his nose in a duel to his third cousin because he got upset over a math question. When your life is based around how good you are at finding solar flares and the position of stars and planets, it's obviously worth fighting for. Anyway, that's not why we're here. Who cares about his brass nose or how much money he had? I want to know about those damn animals. Depending on where you look, it's said that Tycho had a tame elk or moose. I highly doubt he had a tame moose though, considering they're the size of a full-grown Ford F-150. I guess at the same time, I did just talk about someone with a bear. I don't know, man. We'll just go with elk. This elk was a great companion. It was said to have walked beside Tycho's carriage like a dog whenever he would travel. Although this elk had a problem when it came to alcohol. This little problem was the beginning of the end. The other castle-owning folks in the area had heard word about this elk. They thought they could pump up the jams if they turned their parties into a Disney film. Needless to say, Tycho loaned the elk to a nobleman for this party. It was going great. The vibes were strong. They got the elk doing keg stands all night. He got buzzed off that good Danish drink. The poor elk ended up getting blackout drunk like a teenager drinking black flies would have. The agile creature ended up losing its balance at the top of the stairs and came tumbling down. Hey, be careful up there, buddy, would you?
Just don't worry about me, man. I'm an elk. Oh, shit. Fuck. Tell my wife I loved her.
At this point, the elk was running off of adrenaline and the power of alcohol, but it had broken its legs. Despite the best care from the top-level elk veterinarian at this party, the elk died shortly after. Up next, we'll take a look at how Pablo Escobar almost inadvertently collapsed the whole Colombian ecosystem. Pablo Escobar was the leader of one of the world's most powerful cartels in the 1980s. At one point in time, this man was moving around 80% of the cocaine that entered the United States. That only equals one thing: a metric shitload of money. Money you gotta launder pretty quick. And what better way to do that than by purchasing 8 square miles of property, converting it into a gigantic estate with a sculpture garden, a car collection, swimming pools, and of course, a zoo. Now, it's pretty hard to say these were his pets since the majority of animals he had were the size of a normal person's house, but then I thought it's really the same thing as all you guys that own reptiles, the cold-blooded creatures that eat their babies and kill each other. He might not take his rhino on a walk, but I'm pretty sure your snake's staying in the cage too. That means 2 things. Anyway, this zoo is filled with exotic creatures. Elephants, rhinos, giraffes, basically the entirety of African wildlife confined into his backyard. But the most important animal he had was his hippos. He brought in 3 females and 1 male to keep in his zoo. Just a few years after this, Pablo Escobar ended up kicking the proverbial bucket after being shot several times while trying to escape the authorities. Well, now who's going to look after these animals? Yeah, that's kind of the problem. Pablo Escobar may have failed his escape, but the captive animals with no predators got the fuck out of Dodge. So needless to say, those 4 hippos he took in, yeah, they turned into over 100 pretty quick. So yeah, the Colombian wildlife is now just riddled with hippos that attack people. And obviously people that attack hippos too. These hippos are taking so many dumps in the waterways that even the aquatic ecosystems are being destroyed. Those poor capybaras. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, feel free to subscribe for more content.